It means the Ministry's interfering at Hogwarts.
You're not going mad. You're just as sane as I am.
I must not tell lies.
You seem to be laboring under the delusion that I'm going to, what was the phrase? Come quietly.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We are covering Chapter 29, Career Advice. Jenn is back with us.
Hey guys, this is one of my favorite chapters.
Is it really?
Yes.
I can't wait to hear why, but what we have in the chapter is basically career advice, stunningly. We get a career advice meeting that has a surprise guest involved in that meeting, which creates some fireworks. The twins have a moment, not firework related, but they have another surprise in store for our new headmistress. And we get one of the dumbest things that I think could have possibly occurred, which will kick off a whole Dan rant.
Can't wait.
Yeah. And, we might get a little piece of the rant here very early on in this chapter, because Harry is talking to Ginny. He wants to speak with Sirius after, the memory of, if you remember our last chapter, Jen and I were talking at length about the James versus Snape of it all, and how unfortunate of a scene that was for James and Sirius.
Yes.
Not
their best moment.
Not their best moment. And, Harry's telling Ginny that, oh, man, I just want to speak with Sirius. Because that memory that he's witnessed is just weighing him down and really causing him some distress. And Ginny's like, oh, we'll find a way to talk to Sirius. We'll find a way. You know which way they should go with?
Which way, Dan?
Jen, do you remember at the end of the Christmas holiday, in this very book, not 3 books ago, not 2 books ago, this book, like a couple of months ago, he gets a package from Sirius. And what does Sirius say about it? If you need to communicate with me, use this. And Harry just immediately dismisses it as, well, I don't want to get Sirius caught, I don't want to lure him out, so I'll never use this. Jen, this is the moment to use that package.
This is the moment.
And nope, just not a thought. That's okay, Jen. We're going to go on to the career advice part of this, okay? We're going to go on. We're going to just forget about that like Harry forgot about the package. We're going to go on to career advice. Don't you worry, I got more on that coming up. Don't you worry.
Dan is not feeling passionate about this at all.
It's so dumb. It's so dumb. So we get career advice. What career advice is? It's a meeting with the head of house to discuss future career possibilities. We learn a little bit about some of the requirements of certain things, and I'll start off with what Ron is reading about healing. He goes, healing, or to be a healer, it requires an E, exceeding expectations, in Newt-level potions, herbology, transfiguration, charms, and defense against the dark arts. So when we went to St. Mungo's, we kind of had that discussion about, to be a healer, you have to be on your game.
Yeah.
Because there is so much that can happen. Yeah. And I get that there are different floors to St. Mungo's, so maybe you, really dive into herbology if you're working on one floor, or you really dive into defense against the dark arts.
It probably has specialties just the real world has, orthopedics and,
right.
and oncologists.
But here, it's definitely telling you that you at least have to be very, very good in that set of disciplines.
Makes sense. You need a background, and then you probably build a base.
And Ron is like, wow, they're asking kind of a lot. That's a lot. And Hermione comes back with, well, it could always go into Muggle relations. All that requires is an OWL in Muggle studies. You just have to pass.
Yeah.
You just have to pass.
They don't care.
The OWL in Muggle studies.
They'll take anyone.
Wow. Okay.
You just have to be passionate.
Is that just a comment on what the wizarding world thinks of Muggles? You don't really need a whole lot of education for that. You could just literally
I feel like between that and how it feels like Ron's dad is often looked down at the Ministry, very telling that they think Muggles are beneath them.
I think that's more of an indictment on the wizarding world as a whole.
Absolutely.
Then, yeah. Now, honestly, Jen, I could see where Bill got lured into this profession. Gringotts curse breaking. Yeah. This sounds amazing.
Well, parts of it sound amazing.
Travel, adventure,
those are the parts.
Danger.
The danger, I'm not sold on. Arithmancy, I'm there.
You know what? After reading that could be like a Gringotts curse breaker type thing, I'm more on board for arithmancy. Because I think that class has its merits now.
Have you not been on board for?
No, not really. It never really. Well, okay, I know why you are. That's fair.
It was always, even when I was a kid and I would read it, I was like, I want to know more about this class.
It's okay, that's fine. But now I'm more on board with it, now that I know it's part of this specific...
I would imagine that it's basically that arithmancy's like, or arithmancy is, has to be like analogous to like cryptography. I
would imagine it's a little, because there's also an ancient runes class too, right?
That's true.
So I'd imagine it's a little bit of that and a little bit of math. Which math,
I can see that.
Math is your thing,
math
not
is
my thing.
So my thing. I'm a huge math nerd. I don't know if that's come up on the podcast before.
She's very mathletic, folks. So I don't know that if it's more math related, I'm like, I don't know that that's part of my deal. But the travel, adventure, and danger, yeah, sign me up for that. I'm down.
You're down for the danger?
Yeah. Have you never watched Indiana Jones?
Oh my God.
Oh man, I'd be all over that. Come on. So that's your first little taste of what the career advice is.
You can't spell Indiana Jones without Dan.
So we go on to Fred and George causing some disruptions during the leisure time of the Easter holidays, which I just think is a really nice gesture on their part.
That was very nice of them, and they even
very thoughtful.
They even acknowledged that they did it to help Hermione in her studies, and she looks appalled.
Yeah, it's a really nice gesture on them to acknowledge that, hey, everything's cool, we're on break, no need to really throw chaos in the air, but you just wait. We got something in store coming up. And then we get to Dan Rant Part 2. Harry says, and I quote, he'd been thinking of how to pull off this whole idea of communicating with Sirius. For how long, Jen? How long?
A fortnight.
A fortnight. A fortnight he has been dwelling on how he can communicate with Sirius. Not one time does he think about the package that Sirius gave him for expressly that purpose. Not one time.
That also means
fortnight.
That also means he hasn't gone through his trunk in that long either.
Apparently. This is egregious. And I know we get flack sometimes by people listening to this podcast saying we're too harsh on Harry. I'm sorry. Comment with how we're supposed to take this, because this is egregious.
Between his decision to put his head in Snape's pensieve last chapter,
yes,
and his inability to remember Sirius's Sirius's mirror in this chapter, feel like he's not paying attention.
Oh, well, you just mentioned something.
I did.
You just mentioned something. You mentioned that he might not be thinking of the thing that he received mere months ago. But he sure remembers the knife Sirius got him. I'm sorry. What? How do you remember that? To open a lock? Oh, my goodness. This bothers me.
He remembers the more dangerous.
Look, this plan is essentially, let's break into Umbridge's office and use the Flu Network because she told me that was the one fireplace that's not being watched. So we're going to break into her office using Sirius's knife that he gave me, which opens any lock depending on what charm is placed on the door. And we're going to try to communicate with Sirius that way. Jen, this seems like a really, really big risk that you're running just to confirm that your dad wasn't a jerk.
Yes.
Why are you taking this risk?
Because Harry, in this book, has lost the plot. He's lost any of his common... I don't know how much common sense he had, but he's got negative amounts of common sense.
You mentioned the pensieve in the last chapter.
Yes.
That's a risk. And that's a risk...
This whole book is a risk.
You and I both said in the last chapter that that's a risk that we're not taking just looking into Snape's pensieve.
This feels worse to me.
100 times worse. So much worse.
So many things could go wrong at so many different points in this that you have to be perfect in order to get this to work.
This is... And
it's not for something where you're like alerting the order that something's gone wrong, or she's preventing you from doing something, or she's punishing, she's, I don't know, locking children in cupboards, I don't know what, right? Like, this isn't it's to say, oh, hey, so one incident that I saw, can you just tell me that my dad's not a jerk?
Yeah. And for those that are fervent Harry defenders and think we're being too harsh on Harry, well, look towards Hermione. You're probably thinking we're sounding a lot like Hermione, because Hermione spends the vast majority of this chapter really just annoying the heck out of Harry about, like, you shouldn't do this. This is not a good idea. This is really, really bad. So much so that her repeated warning sounded so much like a hiss, Seamus checked his cauldron for 5 minutes looking for leaks.
I love that. I love that detail. That's perfect. Also, Hermione is my spirit animal in this chapter because I too also have a really hard time, like, not trying to, like, help someone.
When you see someone is
running
towards an oncoming train, you're trying to remove them from that track.
Absolutely. So, like, I understand the compulsion of just being like, I need you to hear me because you're not thinking. Yeah. I get it.
I'm not even done with this rant yet. We're coming back later.
Oh, I love
We're coming back. But this is... I just want to state for the record on this podcast that is recorded, that will be on Spotify or wherever you're listening to this podcast for all time until they decide to take it down. This is dumb. Like, this is a really stupid decision on an epic level. Moving on. So he's worried about class with Snape. He's worried about just potions class because of what Snape's going to say or do from the events of the last chapter.
It's his first time seeing Snape since he saw his memory.
And stunningly, he's just left alone. Snape doesn't do anything. And Snape's not over his shoulder. He's not paying attention to him, not commenting on him. And this time left alone, actually, Harry discovers, oh wait, when I cannot do this with someone over my shoulder, I can actually make a potion. Like, I can do well here.
Yeah.
And he makes what he thinks is a great invigoration drop. And then promptly hands it to Snape, who drops it or lets it fall. We're unclear on exactly the details. But anyway, it drops.
Yep.
And breaks.
Yep.
And Snape's like, I guess that's a 0.
And Malfoy's laughing. Harry rushes back to his cauldron to get more, and Hermione emptied it already. Ouch. Tough break.
Hermione is not endearing herself to Harry in this chapter.
Not at all.
Even though she's right, it's a stupid idea.
Anyway, she is right.
Continuing on. All right, so Harry has the career advice meeting, which he almost forgets about. It does take up some of Ferenza's divination class. But
he does forget about it. Ron has to remind him, and he shows up late.
Yeah, aren't you supposed to be somewhere? Oh, man, yeah.
I like that Ron, of all people, is reminding him.
Yeah, right? You know you're in trouble. Your mind's on other things.
Yeah.
So he gets to McGonagall's office a couple minutes late, and he notices that Umbridge is sitting in on this meeting.
Lovely.
Oh, it's just great. Just great. You know who else is a fan of this? McGonagall. Who's seething the entire time.
She's my favorite.
She is not happy.
No.
So this meeting is to decipher what you want to do and what classes you might need to do it. And Harry decides that being an Auror is his life's ambition. So, what does that require? He needs, obviously, top grades. Stunning. She estimates that he'll need 5 exceeds expectation newts, and she gives him 4 classes specifically: Defense Against the Dark Arts, Transfiguration, Charms, and Potions. My question to you, Jen, is what would the other one be? What do you think the 5th class might be? That's
a really good question.
My bet is Herbology.
See, that was what popped into my mind, but I almost want to go more... Well, first of all, do we know that it's a strict requirement? Because maybe it's just that you have to have 5 exceeds expectations and one of them can be a wild card.
She doesn't really clarify that specifically, other than the Defense Against the Dark Arts, obviously.
Right.
Set that one aside as a no no doubt about it
Yeah.
kind of class.
That makes the most sense.
You figure transfiguration, you figure charms, you figure potions, because you need to figure out antidotes, and even Harry was like, do I have to?
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah. Antidotes and poisons, kind of important.
A little bit.
Which is why I think herbology, because for the antidotes and poisons, you need to be knowing what you're looking at and how they function to put in said potions.
That's fair.
My other option is care magical creatures. Those would be my top two choices.
Why would care magical creatures?
Because there are, as an Auror, you're not, I don't believe your only job is to necessarily go after criminals. You could just be deployed to handle some dangerous magical issues.
Okay.
And some of that might involve creatures.
Okay.
So you might have to have a knowledge of some particularly powerful or gifted magical creatures.
I could see that.
And it's not my top pick. I still think it's herbology.
Yeah.
But it's obviously not arithmancy because he doesn't take that. It's not ancient runes because he doesn't take that. I don't think divination would really factor into an Auror. And
We know it's not divination. We know it's not astrology. We know it's not
Correct.
Muggle studies.
Correct. So really we're left with herbology and care magical creatures.
See, I would have said arithmancy could have been a contender, but
I see
that's
what you're
where-
doing based on the curse breaker thing from earlier.
Right, because I feel like there could be applications here as well, but that's also where I'm wondering, like, maybe it's a choose your own adventure for this.
Just a fifth, just get a fifth no matter
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Because maybe they also have, like, specialized tracks in that as well, too. Like, maybe they have someone who's, you know, the Auror who specializes in creatures, or the Auror who specializes in whatever.
Specialties, yeah, for sure.
I could see herbology, though, as being useful here. Like, that seems like one he could do.
So she does give us some background on the classes. McGonagall only accepts students that exceeds expectations on their OWLs. She currently has Harry as getting through with acceptable level work. So she's like, it's doable. You just got to get your grades up. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
So she's like, plausible.
Yeah.
Snape only accepts outstanding in OWLs. High standards from
Yeah.
Snape.
There's zero chance.
Which, I gotta tell you, if I'm a professor, I'm kind of setting that high bar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I have nothing against Snape for doing that.
Yeah.
I see nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So Snape only accepts outstanding in OWLs, which seems to shoot down Harry's dreams immediately.
Yep.
Charms currently accepts between acceptable and exceeds expectations. Charms, he is currently between acceptable and exceeds expectations, according to Flitwick.
Yeah.
So he's doing pretty well.
Yeah,
so charms
that's
doesn't
fine.
seem to be an issue.
No.
And then defense against the dark arts, which she dismisses as well. You're fine there. You're good. We don't have any issues there. And we'll get to the counter in a second that sparks off the whole thing. She does say that not only does he get high marks in defense against the dark arts, he got particularly great marks from Lupin.
Yeah.
Oh,
He
just
did seem
of
to
note.
thrive under Lupin.
Yeah. Now, the other part of the Auror expectation is there's a series of stringent character and aptitude tests at the Auror's office. So we talked a while ago about professions and about if there's extra training needed post Hogwarts schooling. This is telling us very clearly that there is.
Yes.
So he'll need to continue his schooling after Hogwarts if he wants to be an Auror.
Wizard in grad school.
Yeah. That's kind of interesting that you'll have to go through even more, and character and aptitude tests. Some of which are just seeing if you're reacting well to pressure, perseverance and dedication, high skills in practical defense, which seems obvious. She said that the extra schooling takes up to 3 years.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. So you get 7 years of schooling from 11 to 17, which would be like, for us here in the United States, it'd be like junior high through high school.
Yeah.
And then an extra 3 years, so you'd be like graduating a little early from college.
Pretty much.
So, I mean, that seems about right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, actually, it doesn't seem really that bad. I was thinking like this Auror training would be like grad school. Like
Right, yeah.
medical
more,
school.
Right, more akin to like you have to do
Extra.
a residency and then a fellowship and then
Right.
it might just be like on the job training.
It's particularly difficult because no one has been taken on in 3 years.
That's a lot of pressure.
Could you imagine, like, trying to apply for a job that hasn't even taken anyone in 3 years?
No.
It's crazy. So crazy, in fact, that Umbridge is like, can he do that? I'm not sure. And she calls him out on his temperament, which, honestly, is a little fair.
Especially lately.
Especially the Harry she knows.
Yeah.
That's a fair
Yeah.
mark against him, I think. But then her little pink note regards Harry's Defense Against the Dark Arts grades for her class, which are not great. And McGonagall comes with the biggest snapback comment ever.
Love it.
Of, well, he has received high marks in all Defense Against the Dark Arts tests set by a competent teacher.
Those are fighting words.
Woo!
She's throwing down.
She
in
just
front of
lit off a
Umbridge.
whole thing.
Yep.
Oh, and she does not care. I think she was waiting for a moment to come back.
Well, Umbridge has been interrupting her multiple times throughout this, each time coughing louder and louder. And I think McGonagall, she's just done.
I think next time we're hanging out in a group of people and you're talking, I think I'm just going to try this approach of just the most minimal cough ever and then see where you finally get interrupted. I'm going to try it.
Why?
Because it's fun. Because it's you, Jen. Come on. I might try this approach. So, Umbridge officially says Potter has no chance of becoming an Auror. And then McGonagall comes back again with just an epic quote. I will assist you to become an Auror if it is the last thing I do. If I have to coach you nightly, I will make sure you achieve the required results.
She really went all in on that.
She really did. This is why I don't get why Harry doesn't go to McGonagall more often. She is so fervently in his corner.
Yes.
And I get she's not the most warm individual, but she is wholeheartedly in his corner.
She's offered him biscuits before.
I was going to say a position on the Quidditch team.
I mean, that too.
But biscuits too.
Biscuits too. She's very... she's not very emotional. I think she's very kind of cold, but she obviously deeply cares about Harry, and she's competent too. I don't understand why you won't go to her.
I don't get it.
I don't get it.
But McGonagall says the career advice meeting is ended. Please leave. Yeah. And then he promptly gets up, gets to the door, and hears them continuing their argument for several steps more.
I love it.
Oh, Jen, did you forget, by the way? Did you forget that Harry is still planning on breaking into Umbridge's office?
I like how his thought after this is like, I'd really hate to get caught because McGonagall really just went to bat for me.
He had the correct thought, immediately followed by the dumb thought.
Yep.
Like, she just went...
Yep.
You said it, to bat. She just went to town for you. Went to war for you. And now you're like, yeah, I'm going to undo all that.
Harry, in this book, and I don't understand it, and I know that it's supposed to be a teenager thing, but, like, I didn't have a particularly rebellious time in my teenage years, so, like, I don't really get it, but, like, everything people that he should respect have said to him this book, he ignores.
Yep.
And I just, it's so frustrating.
Yeah, I will let you into my psyche here for a second. I actually did forget what his plan was because I was so enthralled by the actual career advice meeting and the details, because I'm a nerd, so I got involved in the whole, like, oh, he needs 5, exceeds expectations in these classes, and I got involved in that.
It was neat, though.
And then the argument happens, and I'm like, ooh, McGonagall versus Umbridge, this is awesome. And then literally it comes back to, we gotta, like, plan out how to get into Umbridge's office. Like, I forgot how stupid this whole thing is. And then I got immediately angry again. Harry does choose to follow through with the plan. The twins create quite a distraction, which we'll get to in a second. But he ends up getting into the flute powder, gets to Grimmauld Place, just his head floating there. And Sirius and Lupin are in Grimmauld Place, which, this is great. 2 for 1. This is awesome. They fondly reminisce about their school days. They do admit, however, look, we were childish and we were dumb. That was not our best moments. And there is a level of regret there that they weren't better.
I love that Harry's describing the scene, and one of them is like, was he playing with the snitch?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's like, guys, let's focus.
That's not,
focus.
yeah, come on.
They urge him not to judge the actions of teenagers too harshly. And again, going back to a little bit of our conversation in Snape's worst memory, I'm like, I understand teenagers do dumb things that you regret. We've all been there.
Yeah.
We've all done things we regret in our teenage years.
Yes.
I hope and I pray that I did not bully someone to the point where they were really struggling and hate me to this day.
Yeah.
That my actions didn't cause someone to literally hate me for years. I'm sorry. That's aggressive.
Yes.
And I don't know to this day if Sirius or Lupin had ever actually talked to Snape and was like, hey, look, I'm sorry. Things did not... I know... Look, let's be real for a second. Sirius definitely has not. Lupin, maybe. When they were teaching together and, Snape was making the potion for him, maybe they had conversations about, hey, we're better now than we were then. Let's just be adults and move forward. I'm not who I was when I was 15. Whatever.
Snape seems to sometimes tolerate Lupin.
Yeah.
Same cannot be said for Sirius.
He mistrusts Lupin. He seems to, though, respect him a little bit.
There's something there.
Because he respects him, or maybe he sees him as a more mature adult who he at least values his intelligence. I don't think he ever viewed James and Sirius as being particularly smart, even though they were.
Yeah.
He just views Lupin on a different plane.
You get the impression that he hasn't forgiven Lupin. He still doesn't like Lupin, but he doesn't hate Lupin.
Yes.
He's willing to give him, professional courtesy.
Yes.
Sirius, I think if he could, he'd just punch.
To be fair, though, part of that is how Lupin treats Snape, too. Lupin treats Snape with an air of, hey, you're smart, you're a talented guy, you do your job very, very well.
Yeah.
Kudos to you. Sirius, as we've seen, does not give Snape. Sirius dives right back into that 15-year-old child where he's throwing mud at a kid.
I want to shake both of them. I know this is a total tangent, but whenever they have scenes together, I just want to shake both of them and just be like, stop escalating this, because it doesn't have to always turn into, you both reverting to 15. Just be adults. Get over it. Not get over it, but...
I mean, you kind of get what you give. It's a little I think that's why you see different interactions between Lupin and Snape and Sirius and Snape.
Yeah.
It's one treats the other with respect and then gets respect in return. The other one doesn't. It's honestly that simple. We do find out that James and Lily started dating in their 7th year. So the scene we had was in their 5th year, the end of their 5th year. Lily, not a fan of James. And Harry literally asked the question, how did they get together? How did they get married if she seemed to hate him that much? And they tell him that, look, James did mature. He did get a little bit wiser, a little bit better than he was, because, you grow up. So there was change.
I want to know why Harry had the thought that I wonder if James forced her to marry him. Because that's such an intense thought to extrapolate from a single situation.
Yeah.
He's seen other photos.
Yeah, I don't know if he's assuming a Lockhart thing where he altered her memory.
Okay.
To maybe give him a more favorable advantage.
Okay.
Or something like that. I don't know what he's really banking on, or a love potion or something like that that he may have slipped her.
There's just an interesting path to go down.
It's a dark path to go down.
It's a very dark path.
And that's a leap.
Yeah.
But they reassure him, like, no, it's legit. They actually really did like and love each other. It's just, people grow and they get better. And yes, James continued to bully Snape, but I think they like the line that was like, it's not like James took Snape on their dates and bullied him in front of her.
I love that line.
It was just like, okay, that's fair. Also, as much as James did change, he also did not.
Yeah.
He was still kind of that guy. And it goes back to, I think, James and Sirius's relationship, where I think James probably was better about it when he wasn't around Sirius.
I'm sure.
And then when they were together, it was just trouble.
Yeah. They play off of each other.
That being said, speaking of the relationship between Sirius, Lupin, and Snape, which you think is just filled with animosity, when they find out that Snape has stopped giving occlumency lessons,
yes,
they flip out. They are livid.
Understandably so. Dumbledore said that this was the most important thing.
Here's my issue. Mm-hmm. Their reaction is warranted. Granted.
Yes.
Harry's sitting there like, it's fine. It's totally fine. Like, I didn't like those lessons anyway. It wasn't going well, blah, 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 blah. And he cannot for the life of him...
He's such an idiot.
He cannot for the life of him understand why they are so livid.
I don't understand what he can't understand about this situation. Like, these people that he trusts are telling him, you need to do this thing.
You have one job.
You have one job.
One job.
It's not one person telling him this. It's multiple people telling him this. Why are you not taking it seriously?
We had a comment before about, like, the reason Harry doesn't accept help from adults is because he grew up with the Dursleys, so he never assumed that adults would help him. And while that's a fair psychological breakdown of why Harry makes some of the decisions that he does, like seeking out help. Well, for example, we just mentioned McGonagall.
Yeah.
Why he wouldn't go to McGonagall is because of that history. Okay, I could buy that. Here you have Sirius and Lupin.
Yep.
And I get the Dumbledore thing, too, because Dumbledore hasn't even looked at him all year.
Right.
So I get Dumbledore might be, like, shove off because of that Dursley background history.
Yeah.
Check and check. Got me there. Lupin and Sirius...
I completely agree.
...are as close to actual real family as he probably... other than, I guess, Petunia. But still.
Yeah.
He views Sirius as family.
Yes.
And he is very close with Lupin.
Yes.
He cares about their opinion. And he goes to them for advice. Lupin in his third year, Sirius as often as he can get it. He's doing this insanely dumb thing right this second to get advice from Sirius.
Yes.
And they give him his advice, which is, this is important, go do this.
Yes.
Take this seriously. And what does he do? He's like, well, this isn't really, like, that important, and I'm not doing well, blah, 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 excuse. They're like, no.
Yeah.
Do this.
Yeah.
So, I like, while that Dursley argument holds water with some adults,
Yeah.
That's not holding water here.
No, I don't think it works for this scenario. I don't understand why he's confused. That, like, I can understand the perspective that, okay, he's mad at Dumbledore, so he doesn't want to listen to him. I think that's... On the one hand, I get it. On the other hand, I think it's a little bit of a stretch because he's kind of shown to have a pretty good relationship with Dumbledore in the previous books. So, like, I get being mad at him for this book,
he took
but not
time
to the point.
as he was fleeing to look him in the eye and go,
Right.
You need to do this.
No, right. And, like, because, like, if I'm in his position and just because this person has been ignoring me doesn't mean that I suddenly think that person's not smart. And he thinks that Dumbledore is smart. Like,
Yeah.
he knows that Dumbledore is on top of things. If a smart on top of things person told me in their last moments at Hogwarts, you need to do this thing, I would be doing that thing.
This might be one of Harry's worst chapters.
Yes.
Like, just from doing the dumbest thing that you could have possibly chosen to do, and then ignore the advice of the people who you did that stupid thing for to talk to, and then just ignore what they have to...
Do you remember on previous podcasts when we've talked about this book, and I have said the main thing that frustrates me about this book is the fact that he doesn't listen to anyone. This is what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, this chapter is the epitome of it. He's got... This chapter and the last chapter are just two examples of, if given a choice, he'll make the wrong decision. Willfully. Like, he acknowledges that these things are stupid ideas and dangerous ideas, or that he should be doing this, or that he shouldn't be doing this, and then he'll go ahead and he'll do it.
I know we're hard on Harry. Sometimes. I know that. If you think any of these decisions Harry has made here are good, please let us know on Twitter and Instagram. Comment on the Spotify episode. Let us know, and please provide your reasoning, because I would love to hear it, and I would share it on this podcast.
Yes.
And talk with whichever guest I have on at that point, and we'll break it down.
I would love to hear something in his defense.
At least for this specific chapter, because this was a bold risk.
Yes.
That had everything that can go wrong. And it was really just to find out if your dad was a jerk.
Yep.
And then it comes back as like, whoa, you're not doing occlumency lessons? That can't happen. Go talk to Snape right now.
Yeah.
And he's like, I kind of don't want to.
Yeah.
And they're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I want to hear from you guys. If you guys think we're a little hard on Harry here, please give us the defense. It gets interrupted because Harry hears some things going on in the background, and it's not at Grimmauld Place, so it must be where he is. So he pulls himself out of the fire, puts himself under the invisibility cloak, which at least he was smart enough to bring that along. And Filch comes into the office, and he's rifling through papers, looking for approval to torture students. Because remember, we heard the rumors that he was trying to get those approvals. And he's rifling through Umbridge's actual personal papers to see if it actually came through.
I'm surprised that she was okay with that.
And then he seems to find a paper that he likes.
Yep.
And storms off. And Harry decides, this is my cue, I should leave too. So he leaves. And we learn that Fred and George turned an entire corridor into a swamp.
They're very smart wizards.
Via their portable swamp This is basically... They're smart for so many reasons. They're smart for actually doing the magic to make this all happen.
Yeah.
They're brilliant because this is essentially just a massive advertisement for their stuff.
Their marketing is top tier.
Oh, it's so next level.
Yep.
So they're advertising like, hey, if you want to create your own portable swamp, come to Weasley's Wizarding Wheezes at number 29, Diagon Alley. And then, while that's all going on, did he really get approval for torture and whipping?
It sounds like
Is that what's referenced here?
That feels a bit wrong.
He got approval from the Ministry of Magic to torture and whip students. I think he mentions like hanging them by shackles. What is going on? Who approved this? Is this just a fudge thing? Or is it like what? How does that get approved?
Things have gone a little off the rails.
That is unbelievable. I can't even put into words how ridiculous that is. Nuts. But anyway, so Fred and George have their whole spiel about like, you know what? We're good. We've done what we need to do here. And they're about to take off on their broomsticks, which I feel like this is just shoddy spell work on Umbridge's part, that they can be just summoned by Accio.
I agree. I expected more.
I mean, she could do better. But they just literally do Accio, and the brooms come whipping through. And as they're about to leave, they shout out to Peeves like, hey.
Give her heck for us, Peeves.
Yeah, give her some problems for us.
Yep.
And Peeves gives him a little salute.
I think it's cute.
It's a wonderful moment.
They respect each other.
Harry notes that he's not sure that Peeves has ever taken orders from a student before.
Yep.
Until just now. Which...
It feels appropriate.
Yeah, and that's how we end the chapter with Fred and George exit from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry.
It's a very bittersweet ending. Because
it is.
They're so much fun to have around. They're such great comic relief. But also, this chapter for me is one of my favorites out of this book, largely because it's the most cathartic chapter, I feel. It's got McGonagall facing off against Umbridge. and then the Weasley twins heading out on a high note and sticking it to Umbridge, and it offsets some of the frustration for Harry's misdeeds in this chapter, but it feels like, okay, there are still some...
That's right.
There's still some pushback here.
You did say this was one of your favorite chapters in this book, if not your favorite chapter. I'm putting words in your mouth there, but... so you do think the good things for you offset some of the more frustrating bits?
I think there were just so many chapters before this where it felt like it was just all Umbridge getting her way, that to have multiple events in a single chapter where she's getting stymied at different ends and people are expressing their frustration and pushing back a little bit, it did feel very cathartic to me. So I did feel like it outweighed all of Harry's misdeeds in this chapter, all of his stubbornness.
I feel like we shouldn't skip over the fact that Filch has approval to torture people now.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great. Feels like there should be some laws against that.
What is going on in this school?
That's off the rails. That's very,
Side note.
That's not great.
If Dumbledore ever comes back to this school and finds out that Filch has been abusing students, do you think he's going to be thrilled about that?
I don't understand a lot of Dumbledore's staffing decisions.
That's fair. You got me there. No, anything else from this chapter that you kind of want to dwell on, cut back to?
I think I'm good.
Cool. All right, well, we will end it there, and we will be right back. We are back with a spoiler section for chapter 29, Career Advice.
So I think one of the interesting things about us doing all of these recaps, rereads and recaps together is that it feels like I've started to notice a little bit of a pattern of, it feels like there's a chapter that will build up to an event, a chapter with the actual event that usually has a lot of packed symbolism or foreshadowing in it, or references to previous things. There's a lot of depth to it. There's a lot of nuance, things like that. And then there's typically a chapter that'll be kind of the descending part of that, where it'll be wrapping up and drawing conclusions and moving the story along a little bit. And I think it's been really interesting to see that, because it feels like a lot of times when we're doing this, because we do them in kind of couplets, that you'll get a chapter that has a lot of action, but you'll also get either the chapter leading up to it or the chapter that's coming down from it. So this chapter to me felt very much like it was in that coming down from it phase, because there were a lot of things that happened in this chapter. This was kind of a more exciting coming down chapter, but it kind of starts to wrap things up. It wraps up Harry's preoccupation with Snape's memory. We get a little bit of closure from that, from like Lupin and from Sirius. We get some closure on Fred and George and where their arc was going with the fireworks and the disruption and things like that, and that has a big culmination to it. We get a little bit more of an insight into the conflict between Umbridge and McGonagall, and that's a little bit more of a, longer arc, but it does feel like now when we end this, we can move into, okay, what's the next thing that is going to happen to Harry or that he's going to come across.
I like that. I love your point about the closure of a couple of other plot points happening. That's a really good catch on your part.
Thanks.
I also agree, and we have kind of mentioned it before, about the roller coaster, the ups and downs of the chapters, chapter to chapter.
Yeah.
But I do view some of it in a slightly different way. I guess book as a whole, not necessarily chapter to chapter, but it's also like a roller coaster, except it's building, and then all of a sudden there's a drop off, and you're hurling, speeding towards the finale, and it's just like action.
Yeah.
And we might not be 100% there, but if we're not hurtling down a cliff at this point, we're starting to dip.
We're on the descent.
We're on the descent now, because that's kind of what I was thinking about reading these two chapters that I've done with you, is Snape's worst memory and this. There is a lot of action and character interaction that's more on the explosive end, back to back. And we are in the last third of this book. We're closing in. This is chapter 29. I think there's only like 30, 37, 38 chapters in this book. So we're getting towards the end. So it's about that point where stuff is about to happen.
Yeah.
And it's going to come fast. I think of like the book as a whole of like ascending, and then all of a sudden you go downhill and there's no stopping. Yeah. Like you're turning pages because you can't stop reading because it's that compelling.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Like within that big mechanism, if you look smaller, you usually get the little oscillations between peaks and valleys of chapters.
Yeah.
And you summed up this chapter really well with the closure of the twins and the closure of the Snape's memory thing. That was a good catch. So
thank you.
We're at that point now where this book gets really good.
I really, for as much as I dislike the first, we'll say 2/3 of the book, I really like the last third.
There's some really cool stuff.
I love the ending to this is very. It's interesting because it's different.
It's
and
emotional.
You just get to see so many
on
things.
so many different levels.
Yeah.
So.
And I feel like it's the first time in this series where you really start to... Like, I think one of the things that she does really well with this book is this book feels like the turning point in terms of, like, it opens up a lot of nuance into a lot of the characters and a lot of backstory, and it actually starts to fill in now. It starts to treat you, the reader, as more mature and more willing to understand it, and because we're the reflection of Harry, and Harry is now being given a little bit more insight into things. And the very ending where he's talking with Dumbledore, and Dumbledore actually starts to fill him in on, like, why was he ignoring him, and a little bit of... I know he doesn't give him all of the details, but that aspect of this book I really like, and then I really like in 6 where they're actually, like, working together.
It's interesting because I agree. Everybody points to this book as, like, the book where it gets dark. Like, it starts to get, like, really dark with a couple of characters. And I think doing this podcast, we would, some people would point to book 4 with the Triwizard Tournament being aggressive and obviously the graveyard scene. Some people would point to book 3 and Sirius Black and Wormtail, and you get all that backstory. But doing this podcast, we realize that there are some dark moments in even book 1 and book 2 when they reference some things that are like, whoa, that's dark, or that's aggressive, or that's very adult for an 11 or 12-year-old kid. You said it with, we're not just getting it with Harry now. We're getting it with multiple characters, depth, and their decision-making process, and where they're at in this story. And it's interesting to see. Yeah,
I love that about this book, but then how it continues to drive through the rest of the series.
I can, with you saying that now, I can see why you like Half-Blood Prince so much.
Yes.
It makes more sense now.
Yes.
Okay. So I have a potentially hot take question for you.
All right.
So we spent we spent most of this episode talking about career advice and the career that Harry wants to pursue.
When you weren't dunking on Harry.
When I wasn't on him for his profound stupidity in this specific chapter, yes. Which, for the record, do you think Kingsley would have ever been like, you know what I should do? Ignore this obvious mirror that Sirius gave me to communicate face to face and just go break into my sworn enemy's office, risking everything that Dumbledore and McGonagall and heck, even Snape is putting on the line for me, and do this all because my dad's kind of mean to one of my teachers back in the day. Like, Kingsley would never. I'm sorry. He just wouldn't. Dawlish probably even wouldn't. Like, what are we talking about? Anyway, sorry. You're not going to get me on another Dan rant, even though I just kind of went on one. The reason I bring up 2 oars... Moody, too? Do you think Moody would have done that? Tonks? Come on. Okay, anyway. We're talking about oars.
Deep breaths.
We're talking about oars because my question involves oars.
Makes sense.
Do you think Harry, with all of this, so literally, they have to go through 3 extra years of training on top of their elite Newt grades.
Yes.
To And you might not even be chosen even then because they haven't accepted someone in 3 years.
I think that's just mean.
So, all of that aside,
Yes.
do you think Harry deserves to be an Auror at the end of this book? And I'm going to give a little bit more context because people probably screaming at me like, what are you talking about? In the conversation I had with Zach from Belated Binge several chapters ago, we talked about how we both had expectations for Harry coming through this series of like him progressing his magical ability, and we both wanted him at the end of Deathly Hallows to be able to stand toe-to-toe with Voldy on his own merits. Like, just him and Voldy magically going toe-for-toe.
Okay.
Wand for wand, whatever you want to call it. Like, we see in that final scene, sorry for the spoilers, but we see in that final scene, like, Kingsley and McGonagall and Slughorn are all going, like, wand for wand with Voldy, and they're, like, sparring, right? Mm. And we want Harry so badly to get to that level of magic by the end of the series. And quite frankly, both him and I were entering the Deathly Hallows book being like, I don't think Harry can win this. Like, Voldy is really strong. Mm-hmm. Snape is really strong, and Snape just obliterated Harry at the end of Half-Blood Prince. If he can't beat Snape, how in the world is he going to beat Voldy? And, you know, we get some of these moments. We get, obviously, Harry is able to survive the Triwizard Tournament. Granted, he got a ton of help. He teaches the DA, which allows him to progress his own magical ability while teaching others to defend themselves. So he does elevate his own ability through teaching the DA. I recognize that. But occlumency might be one of those options where he suddenly becomes a really formidable wizard against Voldy, because this is an uncommon skill. He can deploy it against Voldy. Like, this could be good, and he's obviously butchering this. He's not doing well here.
No.
So, with all the profound skills that need to be had, because we're talking more than just defense against the dark arts. We're talking transfiguration and charm and all of this. Is Harry deserving of getting that Auror gig after the events of Deathly Hallows?
After the events of Deathly Hallows?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And the reason that I would say it is that he has been able to do work above his grade in previous books.
Okay.
And I think that he's got a lot of practical life experience that would help him. So he's not going to be a book smart Auror unless he goes back to Hogwarts and finishes his 7th year, because he is missing like that level of education
part of, like, the book level. Yeah.
So I think it would have to be with the asterisk of, like, he would have to fill in some of those gaps. I think this is something where I could reasonably see them saying, okay, you can skip ahead from, like, counting this towards all of the stringent character and aptitude tests, essentially, and saying, you know, either complete the last year or do other equivalent things, or forget it, we'll just teach you on the job.
We're just going to give you a pass for all of the character and aptitude tests and teach you the rest as we go.
I think that he's had more than enough life experience, and he's shown enough that he has promise in all of those other areas to be able to make up whatever deficits he has from not going to Hogwarts for 7th year.
Okay. So, I know I posed the hot take question. It does come down to, what do you value most? Do you think his real-world experience has outweighed the academic side of it that he needs? I think he does, but I think it's worth asking the question.
Oh, no, for sure. Like, it is absolutely worth asking the question.
I think, you know, everybody wants Harry Potter to be the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher.
Yeah. I wish that was one of the things that she had done. Like, I wish that she had found a way to make it make some sense that he became a teacher instead of an Auror. Like, Harry Potter chooses to live the calm life instead of, you know, going out into the field and putting himself in danger all the time.
Putting himself
like,
in the spotlight, too.
Learning from all of you know, he's had enough of that. He wants to be calm. And then, like, you know, other things too with, like, I wish that Malfoy had turned back. Like, I wish that there had been... She had just made these little tweaks to some of the characters, because it would have vastly changed the interpretation of them.
Can I ask you a fun what if?
Sure.
If Harry goes... So we know Neville went back and taught.
Yes.
He ended up teaching herbology.
I wish he had become the Auror.
Neville had become the Auror. Oh, so you want Neville to become the Auror and Harry to become the teacher.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It would be growth on both of their parts.
Interesting.
Harry would learn how to calm down, and he could be happy that he was out of the spotlight, but he seemed to really enjoy teaching. Like you said, I think he would make a good teacher. Neville finally gains this confidence to put himself in these positions that he's always naturally kind of skewed away from.
Interesting. I like that. That was not where I was going with it, but I kind of like the tangent.
Thank you.
If Harry also went back and taught Defense Against the Dark Arts,
Yeah.
here's my what if.
Yeah.
They both teach at Hogwarts.
Yeah.
Who has the fast track to become the next headmaster?
This is a great question. I love this question so much. That's hard.
We never get that far down the history of what happens. Like,
think we
McGonagall,
do.
I think, becomes a headmistress.
She does.
And then I don't know after that, honestly.
I would like to see it be Neville, but it would feel... see, I just don't know that that's in his character. That's in Harry's character. But it would feel more satisfying if he was it, but would it make sense for him? I don't know.
Do you think he'd want that?
That's the thing. I don't think he would.
Neville, I think, would accept it more.
Yeah.
I think Neville would probably be better at it.
Yeah. I would agree on both counts.
But isn't it
But
fun
then
to
it's-
imagine Harry as a headmaster of Hogwarts? So, like, it's just a fun thing to imagine.
It's also funny to imagine him as a professor where his, like, cohort is, or his classmate is his boss.
Yeah, that would be yeah. Neville gets to boss around Harry.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting one.
Gets to hold it over his head all of the times that he dragged him to
Even
danger.
better question.
Yeah.
Maybe not a better question, but an equally as good question.
Yes.
If you have Neville and Harry Potter
Yeah.
both teaching at Hogwarts at the same time, who's the head of Gryffindor House?
Oh. See, that's where I feel like you have... Okay, so you have to make Neville the headmaster so Harry can be in charge of Gryffindor.
Oh, okay.
That's-
so now he's
that's how
plucking
you do
kids
it.
out of, like, the flying class to be like, nope, you're now on the...
Absolutely.
Like, he's
He
a
can-
scout for the Quidditch
He
team.
can coach Quidditch or be the whatever for Quidditch. Mm-hmm. Help with Quidditch.
He literally takes McGonagall's role as, like,
Yes.
an uber Quidditch fan as the head of house.
Absolutely.
Okay,
I
all
would
right.
love that.
So you give Neville the big promotion to give Harry
Yes.
the... Wow, that's a powerhouse Gryffindor duo right there.
That would be a great time to go to Hogwarts.
That would be a good time to go to Hogwarts. Can you imagine if it's like, once Neville would then pass away, you have his portrait up in the headmaster office and just getting to give, like, advice? Like, I don't know.
That would be so cute.
Or Harry. Like, if you flip that and Harry's just giving advice, and it's just like the Minister of Magic, and you can get him being that old guy going like, back in my day, the Minister of Magic was an idiot. Like, just spouting stuff from his portrait. Oh, good things to imagine. See, we're ending on a fun, light note
It
after
is.
all of the Harry's an idiot. But, yeah, do you have anything else to kind of go over?
Honestly, I think that was it. I liked those what if questions. Those were fun.
Those were fun ones, right?
Yeah.
I just came up with those.
Yeah.
Well, let us know what you guys think on all of the random what if questions we had. If you have defenses for Harry in this chapter, by all means, please send it to us either via Twitter comment, Instagram comment, or a Spotify comment that we can see, read. Leave us a voice message. You can hit that link wherever you get this podcast to leave us a voice message. Give us your 2 cents on, hey, I think you guys are being a little harsh on Harry. Here's why. And you might end up on this podcast so we can actually react to your thoughts.
Also, send us your what ifs. If there are any what ifs that you want to hear us talk about.
Yeah, if you have a fun alternate reality what if question or anything regarding Harry Potter, please send those to us as well, and we will debate them. We will absolutely debate them fiercely. So, Let us know what you guys think. Thank you for listening. Please share the podcast. That helps us grow. We also have a donations link as well, because this is a lot of time and energy put in. It's a lot of hard work. So thank you for supporting the podcast, either by listening, donating, or sharing. And we will see you next week for another chapter as this book gets dwindling down towards the end. So we will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.